I recently installed my new dust extractor on the outside of my shed to save precious workspace in there and upgrade my dust collection at the same time. Easily said, but not so easily done in my case. So in this video I'm going to share with you how I did it and what I learned, so that if you're thinking about doing this, you can perhaps do a better job than I did and avoid some of the mistakes I made. My name's Adam and welcome to my YouTube channel. So first let me give you an overview of the extractor that I went with. This is the Axminster AW37E. As much as I wanted a dual motor cam vac like everyone's raving about at the moment, it was just well out of my price range for now. So I chose this one using 4 key criteria. First one was airflow, the second one was price, the third one was noise, and then lastly it was size. So firstly I spec'd the airflow requirements for the tool that it's going to be connected to, which in this case is a new planer thicknesser, the Metabo DH330. That requires an airflow of 460 cubic meters an hour. So anything under that was immediately kind of knocked off the list. This thing, according to the specs, runs at an airflow of 640 cubic meters an hour. So it should be plenty strong enough to deal with the planer thicknesser. Although I do hear online that these things typically tend to be underpowered, so I'll report back on how I find it in another video. Secondly, I had a budget of around £200 or under that if possible, so that really left me with only a couple of options, either something like this or one of those like dust bin extractors that you see. This was 170 for the bare unit, and with all the connectors and the pipe, I'm probably in this for about £200. I could have saved some money and gone with one of those dustbin type collectors. I think they go for about 90 to 130. But the reason I didn't brings me on to the third criteria, which is noise. They are typically, I think, really loud. And these are typically known to be quite quiet. I think this runs at around 60 decibels when on. Size-wise, it needed to be as small as possible. So although this isn't like minute, it is on the baby side of extractors. And as you can see, you can also mount it on the wall to save some further space there. Have I made a good choice? I don't know. I haven't used it yet, but I will report back in a future video. But in the meantime, please let me know if you've got one of these or if you've had one, you know, what you thought of it. I'll be interested to see that in the comments. So if you're thinking about putting your extractor outside, obviously you're going to need to put it in a shed of some sort to protect it from the elements. I'll give you a quick overview of this. This isn't going to be a detailed shed build, but I'll show you how I built it. So the frame is made out of 4x2s. They're just screwed together. Over the top of that is some 18mm OSB all around to give it some rigidity, but more importantly actually to give it some sound deadening, again to preserve my neighbours from the noise when it's running. That OSB is wrapped in A1 Protect roofing membrane all around, which in turn is clad with some 150mm feather edge, just like this stuff, all around. The roof's a lean-to style roof, it's 18mm OSB. Again, it's got A1 Protect roofing membrane on it and some of this cheap roofing felt. The doors are just simple gate style doors made out of 100mm by 20mm gravel boards, just braced together with this. Yes, I know I need to brace it down here. I will get round to that soon, I promise. This is a solid little shed, but probably well over-engineered. There's some things about this that I like, and there's some things that I'd definitely do differently if I was doing this again. So the good things about this are, I'm glad I went with the 18mm OSB. It's really solid, and I think it will provide some good sound deadening. The disadvantage of that is that I used 3 big sheets of 18mm OSB, which was quite expensive. So if you wanted to save money, you could probably go with 12mm or even 9mm OSB if the sound deadening isn't that important to you. I did have a fair bit left over, so I actually made a little cupboard in the shed to keep all my camera gear dust free, which was an added little bonus. And yes, I did put walnut handles on it because OSB and walnut are the perfect combination. Another thing to think about with a shed like this is ventilation. So obviously the extractor is sucking in air and it's got a motor that might get hot. So I've got 3 of these vents around the shed, which should be plenty enough airflow for my needs. These are about £6 off Amazon, £6 each. So you'll see that this is a standalone shed. And in hindsight, what I should have done is just built an extra extension onto the existing shed. It was a right pain in the backside to build. in this little space with no access, and it's really bloody heavy with that 18mm OSB on. So getting it into this position and making it all look flush against these door frames, etc., was hard work. And so if you're going to do this, really think about maybe the easiest solution, and don't do what I did and build something that you just think will look really nice. Because it's a standalone shed, running the pipe work through this shed into that shed was also a lot harder than it needs to be, but I'll come on to that in a minute. So the principle is you've got your flexible hose attached to the extractor there, runs up here into a bit of PVC pipe. That pipe goes through the shed walls, through this little gap here, and then comes out or into the proper shed here, and the extraction pipe runs down the wall so it can reach the planer thicknesser when I install it. Easy, right? Loads of people do this. No, not easy, because I cocked it up because I'm an idiot. The first mistake I made was how I chose to drill the holes. Now, I used a 102mm hole saw to drill from that shed into this one, but little did I know that when they say that this 100mm pipe is 100mm, what they mean is that it's 100mm internally. So this hole saw is actually smaller than the external diameter of this pipe. So the holes that I drilled were too small, which meant that I spent the best part of a day banging the pipe through the holes with a hammer and a bit of wood. My second mistake was drilling the holes diagonally rather than straight through. Now, it turns out that if you're drilling from one wall to another with a gap in the middle, it's really bloody hard to keep those holes concentric, i.e. aligned on their kind of central axis. And so after drilling the two holes through each of the sheds and admiring my handiwork because they look really neat and tidy, after I'd hammered the pipe through both holes, I came back to discover that they were out of line. They were going in diagonally, which in turn, because the hole was so tight, was pushing the extractor shed off of your true vertical, I guess. So it looked wonky when it was up against this shed. I spent so long doing that when I came back and saw that the shed was out of straight, I nearly cried. It was that much of a big deal. To rescue the situation, what I then had to do is take this internal wall off, which is just a bit of MDF screwed in, so it wasn't a big deal, and then butchering a hole around these two pipes with a jigsaw. So I started this endeavour trying to be really neat, trying to keep it all nice and tight so it would be sealed from the weather and all the rest of it. And then because I hadn't done the holes properly, I ended up just butchering the side of my shed. So to seal it, what I had to do was fill it in with expanding foam. And yes, I did use polyurethane foam, which is said to be waterproof. So there's no puddles in here, and it has been raining constantly, so I think it worked all right. So what lessons should you guys take from this? Well, firstly, choose the right size hole saw. Check the diameter of the pipe you're using. Don't try and be too precise with the holes that you're drilling. Give yourself plenty of wiggle room to get those pipes through. Don't worry about being too neat and tidy in the first instance. You can always tidy that up later. Or even better, don't give yourself two walls to drill through. So I come back to that standalone shed problem. Had I just built it up against the side of this shed wall, I would have only had to have drilled through one set of 18mm OSB, and the whole concentricity thing wouldn't have been an issue. So the last thing left to do on the install after that cock up with the pipes was to get the power from that shed into this shed. And I was lucky that I got a plug down here right next to the external wall, and luckily the lead was long enough. But I am electrically inept, and I did not want to mess around with kind of taking plugs off or rewiring the extractor. So instead what I did was just drill a 200mm holes and use some of the PVC pipe to route the plug through too. And I made it look all kind of tidy with this ducting here. Right, so what else can I tell you that might be useful for your own installs if you're thinking about doing this? Let's talk about the extraction hose. Now, the extractor didn't come with any extraction hose with it, so I had to buy this separately. And this is a 100mm hose, which I actually got off eBay Now, Axminster, where I bought the Extractor from, also sell hose, and it's highly rated by the reviews on their website, but it is quite expensive. Axminster would charge you £50 for 2.5 meters of this 100mm hose, whereas I got 4 meters of this for the same price from eBay. I don't know how they compare quality wise because I haven't seen the Axminster one, but this thing's solid. The other thing is connectors and adapters to get the system hooked up properly. I have got 3D printed parts all over this install. There's an adapter to fit the hose to the Extractor. There's an adapter to fit the hose to the PVC pipe. There's also an adapter here to cover up the electrical cable and stop their draft coming through into the big shed. This flange here is all 3D printed, and I did this to cover up the mess that I made with the jigsaw. This is actually printed in 3 different parts because of the size of my 3D printer. So you've got a plate here that goes over the electrical cable pipe, you've got a plate here that goes over the extractor pipe, and a little bar in the middle that joins them all together. I also 3D printed this top plate out of DeWalt yellow, just to make it look cool really, and to cover up the electrical wire that's coming in here. There's a 3D printed adapter to attach the hose to the pipe on the inside of the shed. These brackets are all 3D printed to hold the hose in place. And of course, I couldn't call myself a YouTuber without having my own 3D printed magnetic adapter on the end of the pipe. And that has its own little female adapter that it sits in to keep it all nice and tidy when I'm not using it. All of these 3D printed adapters I designed myself specifically for this build, including the hangers and the magnetic adapter at the end. I used a Bamboo Labs A1 to do that and designed it in Fusion 360. And I'm a huge fan of 3D printing stuff. I've got a video coming specifically dedicated to that because this shed's full of 3D printed stuff. But that was the fun part of this build. I really enjoyed designing all that stuff. Okay, so there you have it. That's how I installed an Extractor outside of my shed to save precious workspace in here whilst upgrading my dust extraction at the same time. Hopefully elements of this inspired you to do a similar thing if you've got a small space like this, or in the very least, I hope this video was helpful in some way. I also hope that by sharing my mistakes and the authentic view of how something like this goes, I can help you avoid those mistakes yourself in the future. In the meantime, let me know what you think of this project in the comments below. And until next time, take care.